Hello everyone, Colin Canet here for Woodwork Web. Today we're going to make this bevel cutting jig for the table saw, and the purpose of it is to cut bevels, most often used on tabletops and things like that. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the process and watch how we go about making this bevel cutter for the table saw. So let me show you quickly what an undercut bevel is. If you're making a top, particularly something like some kind of a table, and you want to undercut the top of it just to give it a little bit different look, this is what it would look like. So that would be like the top, and then there would be a bevel of some sort coming in. And this can be at a different angle. And of course, that's the underside there. So these are different widths here, and usually they're not very wide because in a 10-inch table saw, you can only cut so wide anyway. And of course, different angles, so they can be sharp or narrow. So that's all it is. So for the upright, I'm going to use some MDF, and this is some scrap that I had back when I did the video on making the router table. We'll put a link to that just so you can see that video. And this is some oak that I've had, just a little chunk of oak. I'm not even sure where it came from. It's very rough. You can see that it's been well used, but I still need to plane it and joint it, and I need still one more piece for the outside. But the reason I'm using oak is because it's very dense. I checked this, it's only 9%, it's very dry, and it doesn't absorb or give off moisture quickly. It's very slow. Well, the first thing I need to do with what's going to be the vertical piece is this piece of wood has some router marks on it, so I'm going to first start off and cut those off. Now this oak that I just ran through the jointer, I need to run through the planer to get it flat. And this top looks suspiciously like it's been on a floor somewhere. So whenever I see that, I always like to use a steel brush and make sure that I get any bits of grit or dirt on there, because nothing dulls your planer or jointer blades faster than having grit embedded in your wood. And that's why we never walk on wood, because it puts grit and dirt on top of the boards. Okay, let me show you what we've got for parts now. So this is going to be the vertical part, and this is the MDF. It's quite thick. I think it's 1 inch. Doesn't need to be 1 inch. The reason I wanted MDF is because I wanted something that's going to be flat and stay that way, and MDF will do that. Now I've got the oak. The oak is going to fit on top like that. And then I got another piece of wood. I don't even know what this is. It's something that I've had kicking around the shop for years and years that I'm finally going to use now. And it will actually fit like this. It'll fit up against the fence like that. But the first thing I need to do now is to cut the oak. And what I need to do is just measure the fence. Okay, that piece of oak in there is fitting just perfect. Now, the next thing I need to do is to put my vertical piece in here. But before I do that, what I found with the last jigs that I made is that when you put the vertical piece in, if you don't lift it just a tiny bit off the deck, whenever you have to move the jig back and forth, it always seems to hang up in these miter slots. So I want to lift it just a tiny bit high, and that way when I move it back and forth, it's actually going to be riding up on this, but it'll still stay nice and firm. To mark the back of this MDF, is what I'm going to do now is mark where I want, because I want to drill some holes in here so that I can drill right into this oak. So I decided I'm going to use these panhead screws, or modified panhead screws, because I'm going into MDF. So what I want to do, I'm going to use this Forstner bit, and I'm just going to drill a hole just deep enough that we can bury that head in there. So just ever so slightly down. And when I do that, it also leaves just a little hole in the bottom that I can then drill out with my regular bit. Now the next thing we need to fasten on is this piece, and I've already taken a couple of minutes and I've marked on there a line that aligns with this board. Now what I've done in the past is just simply screw this on, and I'm kind of going to do that this time, but I've got a little bit of a wrinkle. Instead of just screwing it on there, and the problem with doing that is if this board expands or contracts, then it starts making it sloppy here, so this can start moving around, or it's too tight to move. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to use these what they call hanger bolts. Let me show you a close-up of what these look like. So these are what they call hanger bolts, and if I can keep it on there, you can see that it has wood thread or screw thread on one side, and it has nut thread or on the other side, or it's actually a bolt. And what I'm going to do in my case, I'm going to use wing nuts. So I'm going to screw this into the cross member piece to here. Then this will slide through the back piece, and I'll have a washer back here. And that way I can tighten or loosen it. And if I have to put shims in there, if it gets too loose, then I can back it off and put shims in there so that I can always keep that backer place snug and not real tight. So the first thing I'm going to do is drill a pilot hole in each one of these. And now with my nut driver, I can just drive that screw in, and I have to stop after each one and remove the nuts on the, there it goes. Now I just need to enlarge those holes so they fit through the bolt size. Okay, I just took a moment and put some shims, and I think you can see them in there. And the whole thing is sliding much nicer now, and I can adjust it to whatever the conditions are. So I can, just by moving these wing nuts a little bit, this easily loosens, and I can put, if this area swells a lot, I could put 2 or 3 shims in there. But the way it is right now, I've actually got a nice smooth action here. Now the last thing I need to do is I want to put a strip on the inside here so that there's something for whatever I'm cutting to be butting up against so that it doesn't move on there. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay, well, we're ready to give this a whirl, and I like the way it moves back and forth smoothly. Okay, that's good. Now I'm going to change my blades, and we'll try this out and see if it actually works. Now what I'm showing you here is how you can sight down the blade. And so there's the blade. I'm moving that so you can see what that is. And this is just a test strip that I have at the back. And what I'm going to do is adjust the blade so that you can see. Now this is 7.5 degrees. Okay, so what I have here is just a piece of scrap MDF, and I'm just going to run it through all 4 sides. So there's the difference, and these 2 pieces are exactly the same size. The difference is, and there's what that looks like underneath. It does a very nice cut, and typically when you're looking at a table, you're always looking down, but here's a table that has quite a thick look to it, and for a table like this, of course, you'd be using probably thicker, heavier legs. This one is for a leg or a table with maybe some finer legs, maybe some tapered, more like spindle legs, and it gives you a little bit less bulk look to it. And just the difference in styles, and now there's a couple of options that I can work with. Well, that concludes my video on making the tabletop bevel jig. And the one thing I didn't mention, when I put the shims in here, it tended to want it to move this board here, sort of kick it into the table saw fence, which is good because then it clamped it a little bit better, made it a little bit tighter, a little bit sturdier. So anyway, I'm thrilled with the results of it. It's the kind of thing that if you're making tables and you're using small, thin, tapered legs, that's exactly the kind of top that you want, rather than, you know, something, a big, heavy-looking top like that. So just different styles, and that's, now you know the kind of jig that you can make if that's the kind of thing that you're making. I'm Colin Canet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and make sure you stay tuned because I got lots more videos coming.